Hello, everybody. We are expecting severe weather today, with the main threats being damaging winds, large to extremely large hail, and the possibility of tornadoes, some maybe being strong. The date is Sunday, June 8th, 2025. Let's dive right into the forecast. Here's our day one convective outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. As you can see, we are expecting widespread severe weather, but our biggest focus today is going to be on the southern Oklahoma and Texas border, which is where we have a moderate situated. Surrounding this is an enhanced risk, which encompasses almost the entirety of northern Texas and even stretches up into central Oklahoma. Then we have a slight risk encompassing our main risk area, but stretching into western and central Arkansas, Missouri, and southern Kansas. And then we have another slight risk on the Atlantic coast of the United States. The main threat today is going to be damaging winds with a hatch 30 and 45% moderate and high risk in our main risk area. And then we can't forget about our slight risk, which extends up into Missouri, most of western to central Arkansas and southern Kansas, along with our Atlantic coast slight 15% risk of wind. And then we have a hatched moderate 30% risk of hail in the Texas panhandle, stretching all the way into central Oklahoma. And then last but certainly not least, we have a slight 5% risk of tornadoes in our main risk area today, along as around lunchtime, we see our first round of storms initiate in northwestern Texas, and then they develop fairly quickly because of our extremely favorable environment, producing that threat for tornadoes, wind, and very large hail. And additionally, these storms did initiate along a stationary boundary, and this model is also predicting that they're going to lay an outflow boundary. By mid afternoon, these storms are going to make their way into the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, bringing all hazards to this area and actually stabilizing the environment out behind them. We'll actually talk about why this is important in a little bit. But something to notice is that this model is predicting discrete cells along our outflow boundary, which could pose a larger threat for tornadoes. Along with that, we see our main line of storms up here initiate along our cold front, and these will push southward into central Oklahoma and the Texas panhandle as we go into the evening hours, reaching areas like OKC and Wichita Falls around sunset at their peak strength when they'll be producing the highest winds. And then because of that stable air left behind of that storm that went through the Dallas Fort Worth area, we'll actually see sort of a calming down and unorganizing of storms back here. And it looks like DFW might get spared by a round two, but areas north and southwest of DFW will not. Moving into the later hours, we'll see that a little bow echo starts to develop northeast of DFW, and this could actually pose a larger wind threat out here in Texarkana. And then moving into the late night hours, we can see that more storms are expected to fire up along our cold front, but these aren't expected to be severe. In our mid-Atlantic risk area, we can see storms out here Sunday morning associated with a low left behind by a mesoscale convective system. And then near afternoon, we can see more storms start to develop, and into the late afternoon, bringing that main risk for this area. That being mostly wind and possibly an isolated threat of tornadoes along a boundary up here. The main initiators of our weather today are going to be this large trough digging in over the central to northern United States, this little short wave out here in front of a cold front that's going to cause that line of storms, and an associated cold front and westerly flow along with upper level shear out here, causing weather in the mid-Atlantic. And one last thing that I forgot to mention was a dry line back here. Very quickly taking a peek at some soundings. This is for the first round of storms in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We say a elongated hodograph indicating that mostly wind and hail threat and possibly some supercell splitting. We see low amounts of low level shear, but high amounts of deep level shear, good lapse rates, deep moisture, and decent temperature moisture gradients. Very minimal capping, absurd amounts of CAPE reaching upward of 6,000, a high precipitable water 1.97 inches, bringing that wind threat, and then 121.3 CAPE indicating a very unstable low atmosphere. Additionally, we do see some wind veering, which could help with the organization of storms. An area of increased tornado probability tomorrow could be those storms in western Texas near Lubbock along the outflow boundary. As we can see, we have a hodograph very conducive for tornadoes. We see more wind veering, and we see good low level helicity and good low level shear, along with that good upper level shear, along with the stuff we mentioned earlier with that large amounts of cape, deep moisture, and good lapse rates. But one thing we do notice that could be an issue for storms trying to reach out and touch the ground and make those tornadoes is that we have a higher lowest cloud level. So, despite all the other favorable parameters, these storms could be more elevated, kind of minimizing that tornado threat. And then the last sounding we're going to look at is for our main line of storms on our cold front. We can see that we have a very funky photograph here, but the main things to look at are high lapse rates and solid amounts of cape. So these storms are definitely going to pose a threat for hail and wind. Additionally, we have a very high amount of 3 cape near 134, indicating that very unstable environment near the surface. But we definitely do see signs of ingredients being spent out in front of this from our earlier storms in the day, with our shear ingredients being sort of lackluster.